France and the Wallabies, and it's a 2-point game. If you didn't watch it, then please, at some point, find a way to watch the way this game ended, because although it ends with a penalty, and the Wallabies getting it, France were within one line-out take of winning this game. And they actually kind of won the line-out. We'll get to that. It's the Wallabies against France, the first of their 3-match series on paper, like apart from the Lions tour of South Africa, which is rife with COVID at the moment. Like, these are two pretty evenly matched teams. This is not Tonga up against the All Blacks. This is, two pretty bloody good teams, albeit young. Two young teams as well. Two teams to maybe looking out for in 2023. That being said, they weren't perfect by any means. A bit of rust to be sure, and some combinations that surely need to be built. But 23 points to 21. The crowd didn't look that great. But you got to remember, the Aussies having their own kind of COVID issues as well. I was asking people on the live stream, what's the deal with restrictions, and people are struggling to keep up because each state and day by day is having changes. So you could kind of not blame people for not wanting to be in a crowd full of people with the way things are at the moment. Someone mentioned on the stream that the train stations and whatnot are virtually deserted. So yeah, it's not a normal crowd, I would imagine. Almost 20,000 there though, is what they said in the post-match stuff. The Wallabies missed touch early. Tom Banks, a kind of uncharacteristic error from him. Not the kind of thing you want to be doing in a test match. And the French got on the board first through Villiers. 6 minutes, he gets a try. Some great French hands in the build-up. They managed to find some space, and he doesn't need a lot of space. Old Villiers. So it's 5 points to 0 early. They missed the conversion, and it was a pretty kickable one. And looking at that scoreboard, that's maybe one moment if you're French that you look back and go, that's pretty costly. Paisami looked to have struck back for the Wallabies on 12 minutes. A cracking kind of scrum set play goes one phase, and then Paisami bursting over from a nice flat Jake Gordon pass. But when they re-examined the pass, knew the pass is slightly forward rather than being flat. But either way, Paisami looked deadly when he ran that ball forward. It's just a shame the pass wasn't quite as flat as it needed to be. 15 minutes, France won a scrum penalty. They managed to get down. They're down their own end. That's a good exit for them with the scrum penalty. They managed to win another penalty down the Wallabies end, and this time the kick does go over. So it's from Carbonell, it's 8 points to 0. And then 21 minutes, the Wallabies really put the heat on the French scrum. The full pack, like the loosies, are not trying to, on a defensive scrum, they're not trying to stay ready to tackle. I mean, maybe Hooper is a little bit, but they're trying to push. And the French pack starts to crumble a wee bit under the pressure. However, they still get the ball out really well. And then Dante gets a brilliant little inside ball to Villiers. Again, you don't need to give this guy any space. He's a former Sevens guy, so you give him space, he will punish you. Suddenly, it's 15-0. 2 tries to nothing. The Wallabies are looking kind of shell-shocked. Apart from the denied try to Paisami, they haven't looked like that kind of much. Yeah, it's kind of worrying times. The crowd's pretty quiet. That being said, 32 minutes, the Wallabies, well, from about 30, really, they do start cranking up the pressure on the French. Eventually, it's kind of penalty after penalty to the point where the French get a warning that you're going to get yellow carded if this kind of infringements kind of keep occurring. But from the next line-out maul, it kind of crabs to the side initially, but eventually, I think Gordon's in there as well, the halfback. They power it over, and Paenga Amosa is the guy who gets rewarded with the try for that one. It's on 34. Lolosio slots what's not an easy conversion by any means. So 15 points to 7. And again, the conversion, in the scheme of things, very important. So it's kind of a half of two halves. The first half of the first half goes very much in favour of the French, and the second half was more Wallabies dominated. But the territory and possession stats are highly in favour of the Wallabies in that first half. but they've had more knock-ons. They've had more turnovers conceded. The turnovers conceded is 6-3, but they have had 64% possession, so you expect them to have more. Also, the Wallabies' tackling percent is not that great, 81, whereas the French are at 88. The French have had to make about 20 more tackles, though. Where it is costing the French is the penalties conceded. It is 7-2. Second half, the Wallabies opt for 3. I think that one was generated from Michael Hooper at the breakdown. He's back from Japan, and he is still looking pretty sharp, you'd have to say. So it's 10 points to 15. After being 15-0 down, 10 points to 15 is starting to look pretty good, but they exchanged penalties because the French kicked the next one to take it back to an 8-point lead. 8 points just being that slightly bit more comfortable with it being a 2-score game. 53 minutes is maybe one of the bigger moments of the game, and that's why I've hung that red jersey up there, because Taniela Tupou comes on and he makes a genuine difference to the game, you'd have to say. He starts putting the pressure on at scrum time. They win a scrum penalty pretty much immediately. They get another 5-metre line-out going. After that penalty, they maul it. Eventually, Paisami puts a grubber kick in for Tom Wright, and it's pretty much perfect. But you'll notice Tom Wright's name is not on my board because the bounce is a wicked one. He's unable to regather, and the score remains 18 points to 10. 58 minutes, another scrum penalty for the Aussies. This time they opt for 3, so it's back to being a 5-point ball game, 18 points to 13. France, though, Jaminet, the fullback, takes a long-distance one, his debut as well, so give him some credit for having kind of nerves of steel. He slots one to take it back out a step further, 21 points to 13, back to being slightly bit more comfortable. And from there, it's maybe time for the French guys to start kind of winding this game down. Maybe they've got enough of a lead that if they play sensibly, they can control things. They do a decent job of it, but eventually pressure tells. Michael Hooper is able to go over for a try on 71 minutes. I'm yelling at the TV for Tate Mcdermott to get in there and grab the ball, but Hooper grabs it from the back of the ruck, which is only like a metre out from the French line, and he dots it down. So it is 21 points to 20. The French have maintained that kind of 1-point lead, and the Wallabies start to turn the screws. Credit to them. Like, Lolosio is in perfect position for a drop goal. The pass to him is pretty decent. The French guys trying to close him down aren't there in time. He pushes it wide. It's a bit of a costly one. You can see his frustration with that one. Taniela Tupou gets a big old line break. Paisami does a cross kick to Callaway. Callaway's in the space. All he needs is the kick to be just on the money. It's too big. 2 missed chances for the Wallabies to kind of close the game out. 1 minute left. The Wallabies have got a line out. They're on the French 10-metre line, so they've got about 40 metres to go. It's a big effort for them. They get it to Naisarani. He trucks it up, but Dante immediately tackles, releases, and wins a turnover. I saw Dave Rennie yelling at the TV, or yelling at the pitch for that one. He was not a happy chappy, but Dante seemed to do a clear release for mine, so he gets the penalty. All France need to do is win their own line out because the clock's in the red and kick the bloody ball out. So they jump for the line out, and Swain contests it, puts it under pressure, but the French still bat it back to their side. So at that moment, as soon as that ball gets batted to the French side, my brain is essentially going, well, you tried, Wallabies. You came back pretty well, but not quite enough. That's game over. But chaos reigns, and nobody wants to get the bouncing ball. But the first guy to secure it is Tate Mcdermott. Unbelievable. How on earth he's the first guy to get to that ball is amazing. Again, that's why the Reds jersey is up there. And the Wallabies go 19 phases on the French line. The French concede about 3 advantages. Eventually, Lolosio tries to take another droppy, but it's a pretty shocking pass, and he gets well charged down. But what that does mean is he's got a chance to slot the penalty from straight up in front, which he does on about like 82 minutes, 83. So it's 23 points to 21. That's the ultimate get out of jail. That's a a pretty brutal one for the French to take because they just needed to win the line out. And they kind of did, and it still wasn't enough. They just didn't win it cleanly. Hooper gave credit to Swain for putting that bit of pressure on the line out time in his post-match. Crazy. I look forward to having 2 more games like by all means. It was not a perfect game. There were certainly some mistakes. 13 turnovers conceded for the Wallabies, 11 for the French, but that's something we've seen from a lot of these teams who are playing their kind of first international games of the year or the first games for quite some time. Individuals, Paisami and Korobete both have 59 run meters and 4 defenders beaten each, so go forward ball, they were kind of some of the larger guys for be doing that. Wilson, also good ball in hand, but makes 10 from 11 tackles. He's the Wallabies' top defensive man. Gelon makes 19 tackles. He's the top guy for the match, misses 4. Dante makes 14 out of 16. Villiers going forward, 37 run meters, 3 defenders beaten and 2 clean breaks. As I said, you can't give that guy a lick of space because he will punish you. Team stats finishes run meters 309 to 202, so relatively low in the scheme of things for the overall game stats, but the Wallabies edging it by pretty much 100 meters. They had more ball, 66%, more territory, 75%, and the French penalties, 14 to the Wallabies, 6. That being said, the French tackling stats were 90%, which is phenomenal. Made over 150 tackles. The Wallabies only had to make 66, and they were tackling at 80%, which is kind of not that good. It should be a wee bit better than that. But, yeah, the next game's on the 13th, which is not too far away, so we may see some changed lineups. We may see some of the same guys back. It will be interesting to see, like I said, both pretty young lineups. Some guys have got some valuable experience from this outing, no doubt. You maybe say the Wallabies had a couple of blown tries, the right one and the Paisami chalked off one. Maybe they should have won this game. You could say for the French, if they'd got that bloody conversion at the start, it could have been a draw. Would that have been a fair result? Anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts on the game. It was a pretty crazy one. But you kind of love that drama at the end. You can't not but enjoy it. Anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts. You probably didn't enjoy it if you were French, to be fair. Sorry, guys. But there's still another game, and your team full of youngsters look pretty good. I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.